Okay, I'm going to explain a little bit about how I designed this circuit and to do what I wanted it to do. It's a pretty simple little circuit. Basically, here in America we have 3 wires, a black, a white, and a green. For our AC power, and this is 120 volts AC, 60 hertz. So the first thing I did was decide I kind of wanted to add some protection into this circuit, so I put in a circuit breaker. And this circuit breaker is rated at 5 amps. Then I knew I wanted to switch between the 2 lamps, and I looked and looked for a pull chain switch that could do that was a double pull, double throw, and I could not find any. They were all single pull, single throw. I did find one on type switch that I might take apart in a later video just to see how it works, but I decided that wasn't really going to work right for me. So I decided on a relay. And a relay is basically just a switch or a set of switches that are magnetically controlled. And the relay I picked was had 2 switches built into it. And I basically just hooked my hot up to one leg, my neutral up to the other leg of the separate switches, and these will switch to here and to here when they're activated. And so usually these are shown in a box because they're activated with a coil. And this is shown with a dotted line showing that it's moving those contactors. So the relay I chose had contacts that were rated, I believe they were rated at 240 volts AC, which is, and they were rated at like 10 amps. Or 10 or 12 amps, I can't remember exactly, but more than the 5 amps that I was doing here, that I had limited at 2 with the circuit breaker. And relays have a common input, a normally closed input, and a normally open. And those can be ins or outs depending on how you wire up your switch. In this case, I wired them up as kind of an output. My green wire, I just tied, that's your earth, I just tied it to a lug inside the metal case of the project, so that the case would be all grounded. Now then, over here, I have the Edison Socket, named after the famous Thomas Edison. And that is a pretty standard screw-in light bulb socket that we use here in America. And I ran my normally closeds to this. And then, you know, obviously you can screw in any light bulb into this and it'll work. And then to drive the LED circuit, I had bought a little adjustable power supply, and I adjusted this to 4.5 volts DC. And I actually broke the, or actually I took it apart and I soldered on wires in place of the, it had a 2-prong AC plug for plugging into the wall. I took that out and wired in some wires so that I could go directly into the contacts of the relay. So this is my Edison socket and this is my power supply. So now when these contacts are going, the Edison socket is active. When the magnet pulls it down to the normally open contacts, then the power supply is active. To drive this, I just bought a pole chain switch. It just has one basically it is just a on-off type switch, and it is, you know, comes on a pull chain, has a pull chain on it. I tied that to the hot and then to there, and I tied the other side of the relay to neutral. So this is hot, neutral, ground. So now when the chain gets pulled and the switch activates, it pulls these, it activates these normally open contacts, and the power supply fires. When the switch is pulled again and it opens up, it flips back to the normally closed contacts and the Edison socket is fired. And then keep in mind that there is actually a switch out here in the room, you know, a wall switch that is actually turning this black on and off. So this pull chain is just choosing which of these sockets it's using, and the light switch on the wall is what's going to turn the whole thing on and off. And I followed that up. I took the DC out and I wired that to an RCA jack. And this was more for safety than anything else. And I made sure this was isolated from the ground because I didn't want the DC ground and the AC ground getting mixed up. And then, you know, I put the mating end of the RCA, you know, into the little LED light fixture. Oh. Actually, I forgot. There is another little box here, and this box is the and there's a little chip on board that was in the battery pack. So I basically cut that battery pack apart and then left the circuitry of it in line with the 4.5 volts DC, then fed the LED light. So that's another little circuit in there. I'd put the RCA in here because I wanted to, if someone fell and grabbed hold of the light, I wanted it to unplug from the fixture, kind of a safety feature. The Edison socket, if you do the math, 5 times 120 volts gets you about 600 watts out here, if you so desired. You know, I wound up putting an LED lamp that was 8.5 watts, and so that was 0.07 amps. This power supply is rated at 2.5 amps at 4.5 volts DC. You do the math, that comes out to be about 11.25 watts. Divide that by 120, you get about 0.094 amps there. So I'm in the milliamps range for both of these things. So everything's way overrated, more for safety than anything. And then of course I put this whole thing in a metal box. So for further safety, I wrapped it all in a metal box. That is of course grounded here with a stud. And that's how I built this light fixture. The light. Basically it's a couple metal rings with a bunch of mirrors on it, and then two little LEDs that change color when you light them up. Turn the lights out, we might be able to see a little better. They go from blue to green to red.
Thanks, Dad. Bye-bye.